I think Egypt Speaks is amazing. The talent and the gift that God has given her is incredible, and as much of that, the time and energy and effort she has put into developing that talent so she can share such a beautiful word with us. So good to be with you here tonight, Christmas Eve. I say this, I think, every year when I preach on Christmas Eve, that I agree with the song that says it's the most wonderful time of the year. But I got to ask you this year, who's having a Christmas like they planned? Anybody? Anybody having the Christmas experience they planned on, however far back you go planning? Yeah, no, not me either. I want to give a bit of a shout out tonight to our band who are operating without a sound tech because our sound techs have been diagnosed COVID positive. I want to give a shout out to Marcella, who's in the back, who's the entire tech team tonight. We normally have 3 people doing what she's doing by herself, but everyone's down, diagnosed COVID positive, and Marcella has stepped up, and the band's doing a great job. And I want to give a shout out to the three Jackson kids out there who stepped up to be greeters tonight, because our greeters are out as well. So we are operating on a shoestring here tonight in terms of staff and volunteers, but it's good to be here. It is good to be here. To gather to worship. And I say over and over again, I grew up in a really small church. You know, when we had a busy Sunday when it was 35 people in the house, and I got so tired of hearing people stand up and say, "Oh, I just wish more people were here. Oh, I wish so-and-so had heard that sermon. Oh, I wish so-and-so could have sung that song." You know what? We're the folks that God has called here tonight. And this message is for us. This music is for us to use to glorify God. It is our time tonight to pray. So let's not worry about who's not here. And let's focus on who is here, which is us and our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ, present with us through the Holy Spirit tonight. We have been in this series throughout December, Dia de los Tres Reyes, the Day of the Three Kings, and it's been so exciting learning more and more about the kings. We've been looking at kings who got it wrong. We've looked at Jesus as the king who has gotten it right. We've also talked about the 3 kings, the 3 wise men that came, and the way they got it right with Jesus when they came and bowed down to him and gave him their gifts and honored and worshiped him as king. But I don't want to give the impression that Christmas was perfect, even with the kings there. I want to ask your permission. I know it's Christmas Eve. I know that there's been a lot of celebrating so far probably in your lives. I know there has been in mine. And tomorrow maybe it's going to be a big day for you. There's going to be a lot of laughing, a lot of levity, a lot of joy, and all of that is wonderful and good. But I just want to ask your permission if we can maybe take a little serious turn tonight. And maybe even a little bit of turn into the darkness tonight. I want to tell you a story that I first heard close to 30 years ago. I heard it from my preaching professor. It's a true story, and Fred Craddock was one of my professors of preaching, my primary preaching professor. He was just an amazing preacher and teacher. And he always told us, he said, first of all, don't tell a story and tell people if it's true, if it's not. And he said, never tell someone else's story as if it's your own. And tonight I'm telling you someone else's story, but it's not my story. I heard this from Fred Craddock. And I don't even think it was his story. It was one that he heard from someone else or it's something that happened to a person that was close to him. And it's been 30 years almost. I've forgotten some of the details. The details I've forgotten are this. I don't remember if this was done as part of a youth group or a school trip or simply a concerned person in the neighborhood. And I don't remember the age of the boy involved. He was somewhere, I'm confident, in the preteen through teen years. He wasn't a really small child. He wasn't a college student. So somewhere in there. But this boy grew up in the projects in Atlanta, and he grew up in tenement housing, And he had it with, again, I don't know, it might have been a basketball coach, it might have been a youth pastor, it might have been a school teacher, but wanted to take this boy and other kids in his situation and kind of give them a taste and a perspective and a vision of different things. Expose them to different things outside of their neighborhood, outside of their tenement building they were living in, to see a larger world. And one of the things, among other things, that he took him to was a Greek Orthodox cathedral in the city. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to be in a Greek Orthodox cathedral. If you ever get that opportunity, take it. The Greek Orthodox Church, they believe that space and architecture are as much a part of worship as the music and the prayers and the sermons. And Orthodox cathedrals tend to be stunningly beautiful, and this one was. It was incredible, just astounding. They saw it, they toured it, they looked around, they got the behind-the-scenes tour, they went home. And that night, that young man, it wasn't everyone, there was a group of kids that went, but this one boy went back and he set fire to his apartment building that night. And they found out who started the fire, and when he was questioned afterwards and asked, why did you do it? His response was this: I never knew how ugly it was. Craddock told us that story. And then he said this, something that I have not forgotten, I hope I never forget. He said, you cannot turn on a light without creating shadows. You cannot turn on a light without creating shadows. Whether they knew it or not, the Magi, the wise men, the kings, however you want to refer to them, they are living, heartbreakingly tragic examples of that truth. They saw that light in the sky through the practice of their knowledge and their arts and their skills and their techniques. They discerned that light in the sky, that new star that they saw, hailed the birth of a new king of the Jews that wasn't just any king, but Messiah, king of all kings. They traveled across country, hundreds of miles, who knows, maybe thousands of miles. They found him at last. They bowed down. They worshiped him. They paid him homage as the King of Kings, as their king. They gave him gifts. It was beautiful. They had light shed on them. They shed that light and shared that light with others. You can't travel as a caravan of wealthy, whether it's kings or magi, wise men, whatever, into the tiny little town of Bethlehem and go up to the door of this house of total nobodies and kneel and worship and give incredibly valuable gifts without drawing attention. They had seen the light, they'd received the light, they were part of sharing the light. They had told others about the birth of the king. But you can't turn on a light without creating shadows. Tanisha read the first part of that story. I want to read the rest of it here tonight. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born, I got to skip ahead a little bit. Copied the wrong passage into my notes, and I have the part Tanisha read. Give me just a second. I apologize. When they had gone, that is the wise men from bowing down to Jesus, when they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. When Herod realized that he'd been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious. He gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more. There is no perfect Christmas, and there never was. Not even the first Christmas was perfect. Jesus, the light of the world, shining into the darkness, and in that light was created shadow, and children were murdered, and mothers and fathers and friends and neighbors wept, and their hearts were broken. And they probably never even knew why the soldiers had come to kill their babies. Now, we could judge the wise men. It wouldn't be fair. We could say, you know what, if they'd done their homework a little bit more and learned what a paranoid, psychopathic king Herod was, they never would have talked to him about it to begin with. We don't know. We don't know why for sure they went to him. We don't know, they weren't psychopaths. They were doing the best they could to worship as best they could and honor this new king as best they could and shine and share this light as best they could. And yet the best that they could do also created shadows. I hope you have lots of fun in Christmas celebration tomorrow. Fun might not be the right word, but I hope it's fun. But if you're stressed out about whether your Christmas day or some gathering with friends and family later on, whether it's going to turn out okay, whether it's going to be right, whether anyone's going to get offended, whether they're going to get their toes stepped on, whether Uncle Bob's going to say that stupid thing that Uncle Bob always says, or whether the kids are going to spill something, don't worry about that. I can guarantee you someone's going to get their feelings hurt. Someone's going to be disappointed with their presents. Someone's going to cry. I remember the Christmas when we gave our son clothes. He was so sad. He was like 6 years old. It's like, clothes. And he cried on Christmas Day. Oh. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. But give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. Relax. No matter how hard you try, someone's going to be disappointed. How hard you work at it, someone's going to feel rejected, someone's going to feel lonely, someone's going to feel left out. It's not going to be perfect. And I got to tell you, no matter what Sir Laszlo told to Siri, lack of perfection does not equal death. Less than perfect does not mean death. There was no perfect Christmas. There never was. So what do? How do we live in this then? How do we respond? How do we let our light shine before all people so that God might be glorified if we're going to be creating these shadows in the process? I think the first thing we have to do is we've got to reject the cynical notion that no good deed goes unpunished. That's not what this is about. God wasn't punishing someone for what the wise men did or didn't do. That's absurd. That kind of cynicism, it just doesn't bear the fruit of the Spirit. It doesn't produce joy and hope and peace and love. It produces cynicism and bitterness and anger and resentment. We got to let go of that. We've got to reject the shallow and reckless do-gooderism in which we do good things and shine our light because it makes us feel better. That's what else we have to reject. We reject the cynicism of no good deed goes unpunished. We reject the shallow do-gooderism that says, I'm going to do this good thing because it makes me feel good, without being attentive to the consequences. You know that show? You ever seen that show, Adam Ruins Everything? I quit watching it because I get so mad, and not in a bad way, just one of those silly things. But I don't know, maybe sin ruins everything. I read an article just this past week. Jane Goodall, I remember Jane Goodall. She did groundbreaking work with gorillas and connecting with them, learning from them, sharing that knowledge. And do you know, I'm going to connect these two questions in just a moment. You ever heard of Heifer Project? One of my favorite ministries. It says rather than giving money to people which they can't necessarily use in their cultural context, that people in developing nations, buy them a chicken or a goat or a sheep or a cow, something that's going to provide an ongoing source of income and kind of a cottage industry all by itself. I've given to Heifer Project. I've led churches to give Heifer Project. And I read an article this week, and Jane Goodall says, don't give animals to people in third world countries because you're probably doing more harm than good. Because there's a good chance that they're already under stress and strain from not enough water, and cows drink a lot of water. And now you're throwing off the whole balance in the whole village where they live of who's going to be able to get something to drink and who isn't. She said, help send seeds and plants and things they can grow and do, and kind of a plant-based ministry, and all of that's good. But then I've gone, no, not that too. It's important that we're attentive to the cultural context in which we are attempting to shine light and do good, so that we can at least minimize the shadows we're creating. So we reject those things. What do we do? What do we do? We act, we share goodness and light with love, with humility, with compassion, and with hope. We've got to be attentive. We've got to be attentive to minimize the shadows. We'll never illuminate them entirely. We can. I'm just convinced that in this world of brokenness and sin, that Fred Craddock was right. We cannot turn on a light without creating shadows, but we can be willing to go into the shadows, right? When the young man with the broken heart and he's seen this beautiful cathedral and goes back and is crushed and is left in darkness in his own apartment, and so much darkness that he sets it on fire, we can listen to his story. We can love and receive and hear him and not condemn and reject and judge and imprison and incarcerate and all of those things. We can go into the shadows and we can be with people in their pain, in their heartache, in their loneliness, in their hurt, in their rejection, and just be present. Just love. Just let them know that they're not alone. I had an opportunity to be in ministry with some folks in Zimbabwe. I've taken a couple of trips there, and it was good ministry. The vision was driven locally by the folks that were there. They invited us in to help. We went in to help, and I discovered in about 5 minutes that I was really no help at all. I was no help at all. We were digging a trench. They were laying plumbing to put in actual toilets at a school out in the middle of the bush in Zimbabwe. Children before had to walk 6 to 10 miles one way to get to school. Well, many of these kids didn't have school past what we would call the 3rd grade. This school was built up through the 8th grade. And kids to get to it were walking 6 to 10 miles, and they only had pit toilets while we were there. So we brought some money, we brought some what we thought was manual labor, and we started trying to dig. And they eventually, just after about 5 minutes, just tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Pastor Scott, let me dig." And the guys there just knocked it out. It was crazy. And I told them, "I don't even know why I'm here. I can't even be helpful." And they said, "No, you're here. We're glad you're here because you let us know that we're not alone." They felt so isolated, like no one knew their struggles. No one cared what happened to them. And the fact that someone traveled from Ohio all the way to Zimbabwe to kind of pretend to help build a toilet, it blessed them. That doesn't make me special. I was going on a trip someone else organized. We can go into those places. You don't have to go across the country. You can go down the road. You can go across the street, wherever you live, because I'm telling you, there are shadows in Pepper Pike just like there are shadows in South Euclid, just like there are shadows in East Cleveland. Wherever you live, wherever you work, wherever you do your schooling, there are shadows there. Walk into those. Share that hope. Share that love. Share that life. We're going to light some candles. Did anyone not get a candle? If you don't have a candle, please raise your hand, and one of the kids will bring that up. Does anyone not have a candle? It's hard for me to tell with the lights on, but I think everyone's got. I'm not seeing any hands. Over here, we need a candle down here, guys. Is one on their way? Okay, awesome. Like I say, with the lights on, it's hard to see. And hey, Marcella, when I light the first candle, if you could take the slide all the way on the right and push it all the way down, that should turn off these spotlights too. We're going to make it nice and dark in here and see these lights better. But I'll give you the signal on that. I'm the one that forgot to give her the signal about the video at the beginning of the service, so you can blame me for that. Jesus is the light of the world. The light shines in the darkness, and there are shadows, but the darkness has not and cannot and will not overcome the light. Jesus himself said, you, I'm in that too. He was pointing me to, we're the light of the world. Let our light shine before others so people will see the good that comes out of us, that fruit of the Spirit, and glorify God. So we're going to take a light from the candle up front. We're going to pass it among us. It's a beautiful ritual we do every Christmas Eve, but it's more than just a ritual. It's a visible, tangible, three-dimensional, real-life parable that each of us has light given to us by God. We can't get paralyzed by cynicism and fear and bitterness. We can't get paralyzed by worrying about how many shadows am I creating by turning on. We still need to shine our light. We do it with humility, attentive to our cultural context. We do it with love. We do it with grace. We do it recognizing that even if I do create shadows when I do this, I can walk into those shadows too. I can be there in love and hope and joy and peace. I can be there in the sorrow and the tears. There is no perfect Christmas. There never was. So no pressure this week. No pressure tomorrow. No pressure at all. Even for no perfect New Year's either. No pressure. Go into all of these things knowing that you have the light of Christ. That no matter who gets disappointed or who gets their feelings hurt, even if it's you, every situation is an opportunity to love with grace and with humility. Every situation. It's the beauty of Jesus saying love. There's one rule I give you, love. No one can stop us from that. Nothing can stop us from that. No matter how bad someone's treated, we still have the opportunity to love. Satan can't take that away. So let's pass this light. I'm going to walk up here. I'm going to light the first two closest people and just pass it from person to person. I'm going to give you a tip. Just from someone who's lit a lot of candles on a lot of Christmas Eves. If your candle is unlit, you turn your candle sideways to get the light from the person next to you, because if the person with the lit candle turns theirs sideways, you're going to get a lap full of hot wax.